You are listening to the New Book of Daniel podcast. On today's show, we're talking about how to beat back a cold, and yes, even a flu. Now, these statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. And no, the products I'm about to show you are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. There, legal mumbo jumbo done. But when a doctor told me about this treatment about 30 years ago, I decided to try it. And it's worked for me. Today, I'll share it with you on today's episode of the New Book of Daniel podcast. Hello and welcome to the New Book of Daniel podcast. My name is Daniel Bobinski. I'll be your host on this adventure. And today we're talking about how to beat back a cold and flu. It's part of the fitness side of my F system. If you've watched episode 1 of this podcast series, you heard me describe my F system, which is faith, family and friends, finances, fitness, forte, fortress, foundations, and fun. Normally on the podcast, I talk about foundations, which is the foundations of our society, political things, community things. But today, because we got this little virus floating around the world, and it seems to be all the buzz of everybody's conversation, I decided to talk about my cure for cold and flu in the hopes that maybe I can help somebody from getting sick, right? Now, again, I want to reemphasize, just to cover my tush here with the government, that the statements I'm about to make have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration, nor the products that I am about to show you. They're not intended to cure any disease or treat any disease or diagnose any disease or prevent any disease. However, they have worked very, very well for me over the past 3 decades. I'm going to show you what those 3 ingredients are, and then I'm going to also show you some additional ingredients that I have stumbled upon over the years that I think are also very beneficial and have proven themselves helpful to me. So we'll show you all these ingredients. We're going to take a little trip real quick to say, if you want to follow me on Facebook, it's simply facebook.com/New Book of Daniel. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's at New Book of Daniel. You can check out my blog at www.newbookofdaniel.com. You can read my political writings over at uncoverdc.com, usually at least once a week over there. And of course, if you want to send me an email, it's simply newbookofdaniel@outlook.com. That's how you can get a hold of me. If you have any questions about what I'm telling you today, feel free to contact me. I'll do my best to be able to get back to you in a timely manner. Business has been picking up though, so it may not be as timely as I like, but if you want to, reach out to me and I'll answer your questions. All right, so let me talk a little bit about these ingredients. Now, this doctor that I talked to 30 years ago, he said that these 3 ingredients I'm about to show you, you have to take them within the first 6 hours of when you first notice that symptom that you get when you first are catching a cold. Everybody's got a little symptom that they recognize that they usually get every time they're going to catch a cold. For me, it's usually a little bit of a scratchy throat, a little tickle in the back of my throat. I'll get a little cough, and it starts to get maybe a little sandpapery or something. That's usually the indicator for me. Other people might start sneezing. Other people might start getting a runny nose. Other people, their eyes water. Everybody has something. You probably know what works for you, what indicates you, the fact that you're getting a cold. So here's the kicker. Why do you have to take these right away? The doctor explained to me, this is how he described it. I'm just sharing with you what he told me. He said that we always have a level of bugs in our system. It's not like we catch a cold. It's like we always have these bugs living in our system. But what happens is we have an immune system that is stronger than the level of bugs. And when we quote unquote catch a cold, what's really happening, this is again what the doctor's telling me here, is that our immune system has dropped. The strength of our immune system has dropped. And now the level of the bugs is higher than the immune system. So now it's got a foothold. And now it wants to grow. because there's nothing stopping it, right? So it wants to grow, and you get that upward graph, that upward chart that just takes off, and the bug needs to run its course. Think of it like the bell curve. You're going to be cold for a couple of 3-4 days until the bug dies off and your body figures out a way to kill it, and then you come back to normal. It's that curve. What this approach does is it hyper boosts your immune system back up above the level to where the bugs are. I will tell you that in the 30 years that I've been doing this protocol, there are some times when I don't catch it in time. Maybe I wait 3-4 hours beyond when I think I should be taking it. I can't get to my stuff in time, and the bug gets the upper hand, and I catch a cold. I can probably count on one hand the number of times that I've actually caught this within the 6-hour window, and still the bug won out. There have been a number of times that that's happened. But by and large, the overwhelming percent of the time, if I take this protocol within those first couple of hours of noticing that first symptom, I don't get sick. It just beats it back. So what are the 3 ingredients, right? Stop dragging us out, Daniel. What are they? The first ingredient is garlic. Doc said you've got to get garlic in you as soon as possible, as much as possible. Now, I have found over the years that if I take a product called Garlic, it's an odorless supplement, that I can usually take 1 or 2 pills, and that will usually do the trick. If I feel like I'm really getting slammed with something, I might take even up to 3. But usually 1 or 2 will do the trick. And I take this as soon as I notice the symptom, and then maybe 6-7 hours later, I'll take a few more, 1 or 2 more, and then 6-7 hours, I'll take a few 1 or 2 more. And you continue doing that for 3 days. And that's to reinforce your immune system, to keep it built up. I have at times just taken it for the day and then have felt so much better the next day that I stopped taking it. Oftentimes that does the trick. I've pushed the cold back and I've won. But there have been times when I forgot to take it, and then the bug decides to sneak in sideways, and 2-3 days later, no matter what I do, it's going to try to win. So anyways, the key to this is take it right away within a few hours, especially 6 hours is according to the doctor is your window, and take it for 3 days. So some kind of garlic. I have taken actual garlic, not just pills, and there's other garlic pills you can take. But I remember I was on a plane one time, and I started noticing the cold symptoms, and they were coming on pretty fast. I'm up in the air, 30,000 feet. Don't have access to any garlic, right? So I got off the plane. I beelined to an Italian restaurant in the airport. I said, do you have any garlic I can buy? And the lady was so sweet. She just gave me a little souffle cup with 3 cloves of garlic in it, which I then chopped up into little pill-sized pieces so that they would dissolve well. I didn't want to swallow the whole clove of garlic. I just chopped up into pill-sized pieces so that there's it's like an big chunk of ice versus little chunks of ice, right? If all that stuff's in my stomach, now it's dissolving a whole lot faster, and it was absorbing into my body. So that's one technique you can do. All right, so garlic is the first ingredient. Second ingredient is vitamin C. And this is what the doctor described to me. He says you need to take 2,000 milligrams of vitamin C. And I'm telling you what he said, every 20 minutes until you get loose stools. Too much vitamin C will make your stools very loose. I have found that I'm not a big fan of that for, let's call it obvious reasons. I will take 2,000 milligrams of vitamin C, though, every hour for the first couple of hours. And he told me that your body can absorb up to 2,000 milligrams of vitamin C every hour. So what you want to do is pump your body full of vitamin C. He says every 20 minutes until you get loose stools, and then back off to every 4 hours, 2,000 milligrams every 4 hours. And again, you're going to do that for 3 days. My body does not react well to that. I find myself having stool problems. I'm not a big fan of that. So I deal with it. I do okay myself, just taking 2,000 milligrams an hour for a couple of 3-4 hours, and then backing off every 4 hours. That way I don't have such a problem with the loose stools. Now, I've also had other doctors over the years tell me that we really need a lot of vitamin C in our bodies, that we don't get enough of it. So I keep one of these Kirkland bottles on my desk, and I'll, throughout the day, just chew on a 500 milligram tablet, couple, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times a day. That it's kind of like a snack, just to keep that vitamin C coming into my body, just to help me fend off things. Now, there's different types of vitamin C. My wife likes to use a little more expensive version than the Kirkland brand. Do your research. There's high quality vitamin C. There's low quality vitamin C. Take a look at what's out there. I recommend doing research to find out what's going to work for you. The last ingredient, the third ingredient that this doctor told us to be about, and again, I need to emphasize that these statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration, and no, the products I'm showing you are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease, but they have worked for me. The third ingredient is vitamin A. Now, vitamin A is a fat-soluble vitamin, and I've actually found it hard to find. So when you find it, get a bottle or two and hang on to it. But he said that in large doses, vitamin A can be toxic. So you need to be careful not to overextend what I'm about to tell you. I'm quoting what the doctor told me. So don't sue me. These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA, right? I'm just telling you what the doctor told me. He said you can take up to 40,000 international units for 3 days, once a day for 3 days. Now, I will take not all at once. Now, when I first take my dose, the very first time that I do this, I will take that 40,000 right up front. But after that, I'll spread it out for the next 2 days. I might take 20,000 in the morning and 20,000 in the afternoon. But he said for 3 days, you can hyper boost up to 40,000 international units of vitamin A. It's not going to hurt you at all. It just stores in your fat. If you do that long term, it stores up in your fat and it becomes toxic to you. So you don't want to do that. I think the daily recommended allowance is like 1,000 micrograms, something like that. But 40,000 international units of vitamin A per day for 3 days. That was what he told me, those 3 ingredients. I have, over the years, found some additional tips. I was in France visiting some friends, and I didn't have access to my garlic, and I started getting a little sick. And my friend said, well, here, take this, spray this in your throat, and take a shot, poured me a shot of this. And what was it? I had never heard of it before. And it was colloidal silver. And this guy said, my wife is into all these all natural stuff, and I've always kind of poo-pooed her woo-woo stuff. He said, I swear by the silver. He told me that it's an antibiotic, antiviral. I mean, it's all sorts of antis. It's phenomenal stuff. And you can actually make your own now. You can buy a silver generator and make your own. But he said that he had an ear infection, and his ear turned a little red. And the doctors were giving him all these antibiotics, high dosage stuff, and this red turned down his neck, and it went on his shoulders and started going down his arm. His whole body is turning red from this infection. And the doctors are really throwing everything that they've got at this guy, and nothing's going away. And his wife finally convinced him to spray some of this colloidal silver on. He says, I sprayed it in my ear, I sprayed it on my arm and my neck. He said, I woke up the next morning, it was all gone. So he became a believer of it. I'm just telling you what he told me, all right? So I did do some research into colloidal silver. You'd only need the 10 ppm, by the way. Don't think that 50 ppm is going to be better. It's not necessarily better. 10 ppm is all you need. My niece, I read that it was good for pink eye. So my niece has this pink eye. She comes home, got this stuff. Doctors have some medicine. She's on the medicine. My wife went, just a little spritz bottle of colloidal silver in my niece's eye. Next day, totally gone. Totally gone. Um, I have used colloidal silver. If I'm going to get sick now, if I feel a sickness coming on, I will take a shot glass of colloidal silver, and then I've got this little spray bottle, and I will spray it up my nose because this is the factory. This is where the bugs like to live and breed and do their thing, up in the sinus cavity. So I'll spray some colloidal silver up my nose as well, and take a shot, a therapeutic shot right up front. Does good for killing bugs. So let me tell you a little story of how this all. I'm going to add a couple more things for you here. I'm going to go back about 5 years, maybe 4 years. My wife and my daughter had gotten sick. I mean, really sick. They had missed the window. We call this the concoction that I just showed you. They didn't get the concoction in their 6-hour time frame. They were on their backs in their bed for 4 days straight. They just couldn't get out of bed. They were so sick. Now, I'm the breadwinner in the family. I do a lot of training. I fly places, I train. I go places, I train sometimes for 2-3 days in a row. That's how I make my money. I hadn't gotten sick. I'm thinking, it skipped me. I was supposed to do training on a Tuesday and a Wednesday that particular week. And here it is Sunday afternoon, probably around 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I get that little tickle in my throat. I didn't think much of it. I got a little tickle, a little dry cough. And I should have noticed something, but I didn't. But within 2 hours of time, I had gone from a little dry cough to shaking with the fever and the whole 9 yards. And I thought, oh my gosh, I am going to come down with what they've got. I've got to go to work. I've got to make this money. I can't miss this training. People are flying in for it. I can't miss it. So I got online, and I knew to take my concoction, which I did. But I thought, what else can I take? What else can I take? And I got online and started doing a little research, and I came across black elderberry syrup. And there's actually been some university studies that show that black elderberry syrup can help prevent colds. It boosts the immune system, and it also can help shorten the duration of a cold once you've got it. Okay, I have never heard of it before, but I thought I can go get that. The other thing that I read up on was oil of oregano. It can be very harsh on your stomach, so you want to take it with food, but it said oil of oregano will help as well. It's an antiviral, anti-whatever. Do your own research on this stuff. Look this stuff up. I'm just telling you what I use. So I ran down to the store. The health food store is 2 miles away. I beeline there, and this is a Sunday night. I get there half an hour before they close. I bought some black elderberry syrup, and I bought some oil of oregano, and some garlic. I even bought some fresh cloves of garlic. And I came home that night, and keep in mind, I'm shivering. I've got cold. I'm already sweating. It hit me like a freight train. And I chop up the garlic into little bite-sized, pill-sized pieces, very small little pill-sized pieces, and I'm taking garlic. I'm just shoving garlic down in me. And the bottle here of the elderberry syrup says to take a teaspoon once a day, or for therapeutic uses, take 2 teaspoons a day. And I got to tell you, I said, to heck with that, and I took 2 tablespoons every 2 hours. And my garlic, and my oregano, and my vitamin C, and my vitamin A, and my silver. I went to bed that night thinking the next morning I'm going to wake up, because it was hitting me like a freight train. I woke up the next morning. I was fine. There was nothing, no symptoms of nothing. My energy, the only thing that was different was my energy level. I was about 80% for energy, but 0 other symptoms. I continued the regimen throughout the day. Garlic, elderberry syrup, silver, vitamin A, vitamin C, pushing it in, and the oregano oil, pushing it into my body every couple hours. The next day I woke up, I needed to go out and do my training on Tuesday. I was fine. I was at 100%. I totally missed the boat, missed that freight train. My wife and my daughter had spent 4 days in bed, 5 days in bed, horrible. this concoction kicked it in the butt, and I was fine. All right. I got a couple more things I want to show you before I wrap up. Let me tell you that our show is sponsored by myworkplaceexcellence.com. Go to myworkplaceexcellence.com if you want to improve your emotional intelligence, if you want to improve your relationship skills. There's a special going on over there. For $195, you get yourself a DISC assessment, which is a behavioral style assessment, and 2 coaching sessions for only $195. That is way more than 50% off. Go to myworkplaceexcellence.com to improve your emotional intelligence. Did you hear me about that? Improve your emotional intelligence. Okay. So a couple more ingredients I found along the way. Talking to my naturopath, because along the way, I connected up with a really good naturopath, and she recommended vitamin D. She said we don't get enough vitamin D, and she recommended I take at least 5,000 international units daily. So vitamin D is also a fat soluble, but your body can tolerate a lot of it, so it doesn't have the vitamin A worries. I take between 5,000 and 10,000 IUs of vitamin D3 daily. Interestingly enough, I will link to this in the show notes, by the way. In fact, all of these ingredients that I'm talking about today, I will list in the show notes. So you can just pull them down there and get all that information. And I'll also link to a study about vitamin D3 that says if your body is 38 nanograms per milliliter or higher, that your chance of catching the flu are cut in half. Something about the vitamin D helps prevent you from catching the flu, which would explain, if you think about it, because the sunlight gives us vitamin D, why we tend not to get flu in the summertime. We've got a lot of vitamin D in our body. We tend to get flu when we don't see the sun. So vitamin D, and I've heard many more nurses now talking about take that vitamin D because it helps prevent you from catching these bugs. So vitamin D. And then selenium, I also came across just recently, finding out that selenium will help prevent your body, if you do catch a flu virus, it prevents it from mutating. Again, you can look up this research yourself, look it up, but the selenium apparently keeps it from changing into something else while it's in your body, so your body can kill it instead of letting it mutate and take on a different form. So one more thing, and then we'll wrap up. About Thanksgiving here passed, so about 4 months ago, before the coronavirus took over the world, a little after Thanksgiving, for the early part of December, my wife and I both got sick, and I started taking the concoction. I thought, this is weird. This is a pretty virulent strain of whatever it is that's attacking us, because the concoction wasn't putting the dent in it that it normally did. So again, because I have to do training, I thought, well, and I could really tell that it was a nasal issue, is it upper respiratory infection. So remember I told you about the colloidal silver, right? So I have the colloidal silver, and there's something else called tea tree oil that it will also act as an antiviral, antibiotic. If you've never heard of using a Neti Pot before, I would suggest that you look it up. I will put a link to a YouTube video on how to use a Neti Pot down in the show notes, but you can do your own research on it. I was introduced to Neti Pots about, I'm going to say 10 years ago, when I had a really bad sinus infection and didn't realize that I had a sinus infection. I just had headaches, this really bad headache, and I couldn't shake it. And there was not a lot of phlegm, not a lot of mucus. It was just this painful, painful headache. And after several weeks, it wasn't going away. And someone said, you probably have a sinus infection. So I started reading up on how to cure a sinus infection, and someone said Neti Pot. So I researched Neti Pot. I'd never heard of one before. And I used the Neti Pot after taking all the medicines that the doctor would give me and nothing was happening. I used the Neti Pot. 36 hours later, all the headaches gone, everything's gone. So now I'm a big fan of Neti Pots. So if I start catching a cold, I will use the Neti Pot. When I first got the Neti Pot, it came with some little packets of stuff to pour in, and you would stir that up and dissolve it and let that flush out your sinus system. In other words, think of this as the bug factory up here in your sinuses. It's like cleaning the factory floor, right? You're pushing water through with salt and other stuff to kind of clean and cleanse the factory floor, and salt will kill bugs. So now when I use my Neti Pot, I don't buy that stuff anymore. I just use, when I'm going to use a Neti Pot, if I get this back in around Thanksgiving when this happened, I heat up my water in my Neti Pot to probably about 110 degrees. And I put a little dash of the pink Himalayan salt in there. I don't use plain table salt. This got a lot of healthy stuff in it, and it'll help. The salt by itself will help kill the bugs. I will also add a shot of colloidal silver, and I will add 1 drop of tea tree oil to the Neti Pot. This is some potent, pungent stuff. Really does affect your breathing, and you smell it after you put it through your sinuses. But I did that a couple of times a day, along with the rest of this concoction. And this horrific infection, which affected my wife for a couple of days. She doesn't use the Neti Pot. She was hit pretty hard for a couple of 2.5 days. It only affected me hard for about a day. The next day I was back up almost to where I was, and then on day 3 I was back to normal. But the whole setup that I just described to you, none of it is prescription. All of it is over-the-counter stuff. Garlic, tea tree oil, vitamin D3, selenium, elderberry syrup, silver, salt, vitamin A, vitamin C. All this stuff is natural stuff that you get, and it has worked for me for 30 years. So hopefully all this information has been helpful to you. I encourage you to try it. I'd love to hear about your successes. If you try this and you find it successful, let me know. Come on back down to the New Book of Daniel podcast. Leave a note. This is episode 18, I think. So that'll make a note of that. Go back and tell Daniel, episode 18, that this worked. Or if it doesn't work, tell me what doesn't work. And I was sharing this with somebody else earlier, and they said butterbur helps. I've not looked into that yet, but they said butterbur also helps with the cough. A lot of folks will also say to add zinc. I know there's lots of research on that backs that up. What I have read is that you need to take a lot of zinc in order for it to work, and that zinc has a lot of side effects. But yet I know some people swear by it. So I say all of this. These statements have not been evaluated by anybody else but me, not the Food and Drug Administration. The products that I've just shown you are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. And your mileage may vary. You may have additional things that you take. Put them in the show notes. Put them down there in the comments down below, and let me know what else that you use. But there's no reason to spend 4 or 5 days on your back when you can keep this stuff in your medicine cabinet, and with just as soon as you get that sense that you're catching something, slam it with this stuff, push it back, and you're not going to experience those 4 or 5 days of cold and flu. So I hope this has helped. If you want to reach me with any questions, newbookofdaniel@outlook.com. newbookofdaniel@outlook.com. Catch me on Twitter @newbookofdaniel. Catch me on Facebook at facebook.com/newbookofdaniel. Hope this helps. And maybe in the next episode, we'll get back to talking about politics, but I thought this was kind of timely. So again, my name is Daniel Bobinski. This has been the New Book of Daniel podcast, and we'll catch you guys on the next show.